Back in 2003, when the original Call of Duty was released, games about World War II were actually refreshing. Dozens of clones later, and World War II is about as in as skinny ties with piano keys. Luckily, Infinity Ward recognized this after the release of Call of Duty 2 and immediately began work on its first shooter set in present day. Finally, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare is here. But is it just a looker or a keeper?
Weapons free. Bridge secure.
Unless you're an extremist whack job, chances are you have an inherent hate for terrorists. They do have a way of making it easy, and Call of Duty 4 pulls the anger strings quite well. Though it takes place all around the world, you'll spend a great deal of your time in dust-blown Arab countries where violence is an everyday fact of life. Perpetuating this brutality is al-Assad, who hopes to take over the Middle East by organizing a coup that'll divert the US and Great Britain's attention while his cohort, Zakhaev, tries to return Russia to a communist state. Both antagonists are easy to hate, and the game does a great job of exposing you to their detestable personas. The story is told through real-time cutscenes, on-the-fly interaction with characters that are possible to miss entirely, and briefings between missions. In typical Call of Duty form, you play from the perspective of more than one soldier. Eventually, some of their paths intersect, and not all of them make it through alive, yet the story fails to provide many twists. There's not much of a guessing game taking place here. Al-Assad and Zakhaev are bad dudes, and you have to take them out. The Call of Duty franchise has built its name upon accessible level design that leads you by the hand and epic confrontations. Things haven't changed here. You'll still find yourself being shoved down the chute from one massive battle to the next. You'll find small barriers that you should be able to jump over that you can't, and you'll be fighting alongside fellow soldiers who will ultimately escort you to the next confrontation. It certainly cuts down on the confusion, especially for novice players, but it can also limit your ability to flank the enemy or otherwise use advanced combat techniques. But if you're looking for monumental battles between scores of combatants, then you've come to the right place. Modern Warfare definitely opens up the size of the battlefield considerably, allowing for multiple vehicles to get involved, along with scores of foot soldiers. With bullets flying from every direction from dozens of soldiers, intensity is in no short supply. The game is broken up into around a dozen chapters, with each one taking 30 to 45 minutes to complete. When all is said and done, the single-player option is basically the same length as other games in the series. After you complete it, a score-based arcade option becomes unlocked, where you attempt to string together kills in hopes of ringing up combos. It's a nice bonus, especially when you consider the multiplayer options available. The original Call of Duty had a decent single-player mode, but what really made it a legend was its multiplayer. For quite some time, it was the de facto skill scale for PC enthusiasts, and that reputation ultimately propelled it to the industry juggernaut it is today. Call of Duty 4 is definitely a renaissance in this regard. Just as much care has been given to the multiplayer as the single player, resulting in an experience only rivaled by Halo 3. The most important addition has to be the perks. Perks are special abilities that you can give your character based upon how you want to play. If you're the infantry type, you can choose extra stopping power. If you're into stealth, choose to double the loadout of C4 and a UAV jammer to block enemy radar. And while you're at it, why not add our favorite perk of all, Martyrdom, which makes your character drop a live grenade upon dying for a nice surprise. You can choose 3 perks for each character, one from each of 3 categories. For the first time ever, you don't have to conform to the character classes the game is giving you. You have the freedom to create your own. At the risk of sounding like an infomercial, that's not all. Weapons upgrade as you use them, unlocking new attachments and camouflage. There are 16 different maps to battle on, and each one facilitates a different style of play, which makes the perks all the more important. One downer is that there are just 6 game types. You get the deathmatch staples in addition to more unique options like Sabotage, where each team races to secure, plant, and detonate a bomb. Oddly enough, there's no capture the flag scenario, but you can alter each of the game types by selecting modes like Hardcore, where there's no heads-up display and bullets pack a much bigger punch. The other disappointment is the absence of any sort of controllable vehicle. You can call in airstrikes and helicopter attacks, but if you enjoy hopping in a troop transport with a bunch of friends and striking the enemy, you'll have to get your fix elsewhere. The single-player campaign in Call of Duty 4 is a little on the short side, but when you tack on the arcade mode, multiple difficulty settings, and an incredibly unique multiplayer component, you're getting a lot of mileage from your cash. A lot of Call of Duty vets cried foul when they heard the series was being brought into present day, but they can rest easy. Despite having new weapons, the game still plays very much the same. The key is still using the sights on your gun. If you're going to shoot from the hip, you might as well close your eyes while you're at it. By default, the game still includes the auto-lock targeting that allows you to go from one target to the next simply by releasing and repressing the shoulder button. It may seem like cheating, but any fan of the series knows that it's essential when you're taking on dozens of bad guys. Modern Warfare doesn't fall into the latest fads either. While just about every game has a cover system these days, COD4 still uses the old duck and lean mechanic. A big reason for this is the destructible cover. Stay behind some objects for too long and they'll eventually get blown to bits or explode. When you couple this with the ability for certain weapons to shoot through some materials, there are very few places to hide. You have to keep moving to survive. The enemies aren't the smartest lot, as they are formidable thanks more to their numbers than their IQ. However, some of them have definitely missed their calling as an NFL quarterback, tossing grenades 100 yards, dropping them right at your feet time and again. You'll die from grenades a lot more than you will from gunfire, that's for sure. The grenade indicator is just far too subtle for something so important. While you won't pilot tanks or other vehicles, you'll definitely find yourself in the passenger seat squeezing off some rounds or protecting them as they rumble through danger zones. And this is definitely the strong suit of Call of Duty 4. Sure, there are the slogs through wave after wave of enemies, but peppered in between are bits of sniping, gunning from the seat of a chopper, blowing objectives, and much more. You're never doing one thing so long that it wears out its welcome.
We got RPGs on rooftops.
You've been watching this review, so at this point, is there really anything that needs to be said about the presentation? This game is a stone-cold stunner. Who knew the Xbox 360 still had this much headroom left in it? The more you play, the more you notice the small details that make pretty games gorgeous. The lighting, particle effects, and geometry are the best we've seen this generation, and it all runs at a blazing 60 frames per second with no dips whatsoever. While the visuals in multiplayer are toned down a little, they still look better than the single-player visuals in most games. The audio is also strong, although we've noticed some anomalies with Digital 5.1. It appears that some of the sound mixing was done with the 6.1 system in mind, and therefore, some sounds directly behind you get lost. But it's hard to notice when there's mortar fire going off all around you and your ears are ringing from tank fire. We're a little disappointed that Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare didn't stretch the boundaries of gameplay a little more in the single player, but fans will be ecstatic. It's absolutely relentless in its assault on the senses and never lets up until the last trigger has been squeezed. The multiplayer is even better, with perks and the weapon upgrades acting as a balance to the lack of vehicles. The authenticity on display here is to be commended, getting you as close as you can possibly be to something that far braver people experience, without the risk.